Hey friends, my name's Stevie Taylor. Welcome to the Gig Life Podcast. My guest today is Yanya Boston. Yanya's a Sydney-based drummer, percussionist, musical director and producer. Yanya's played with a plethora of top Australian acts, Tina Arena, Tap Dogs, Natalie Bassett-Waite, Even in the Brave, amongst heaps of others. His current projects are Joy, Thandi Phoenix and Karen Lee Andrews. He was recently on the Deconstructed Drummer podcast with Jeff DeCuckus. That's a really great listen. I've got the link to that in the show notes, so please check that out. So, without further hesitation, ladies and gentlemen, the very groovy Yanya Boston. Cheers. So I think we're rolling.
Sweet.
Yanya Boston. Yeah, we're on.
Got your levels there?
Got my levels. Check. 1, 2.
Sweet.
Yanya Boston. Welcome to the Gig Life Podcast.
Welcome to my couch.
Thank you very much. It's a warm couch.
Yeah,
it's a stinking hot day. We have to turn the aircon off though because it'll get
too much noise.
So it's Melbourne Cup Day here in Australia. The day we're recording this.
What a day, huh?
What a day! And you had a gig today?
I did have a gig today. Actually, it was an interesting one. I just got back about an hour ago, and it was pretty disheartening, to be honest. I was playing with great people at a great venue, but it's a victim of the Sydney, not even a lockout mentality, but it's the no vibe mentality.
Yep.
Where the volume is so low that it's literally pointless being there. It's pointless, and full respect to the venues that continue to offer gigs to us under those conditions.
Yep.
Whether it's just for write-off purposes or for whatever, it keeps us employed and that's great. But you really got to go, when you go to those gigs, you got to be in the mindset that you're just there to pay your rent, which is totally fine. But today was a tricky one for me because I came off a really big festival on the weekend, playing to a few thousand, playing original music to a few thousand people. Everyone was into it. It was a really good thing. And I fly to Melbourne tomorrow for another thing, and which will be somewhat like that, I hope.
Yep.
And so I was sort of in that mindset still, and I kind of got to this one, and people are excited about dressing up to see the horses race.
Yeah.
Which I don't agree with anyway.
No, not at all.
But, each to their own. I'm just not into it. But no one wanted to listen to music, and even if they did, to those who would have enjoyed what we were doing, it was at such a low level that they wouldn't have heard it anyway. I could hear people talking like 20 metres away from me.
Yeah, it's no good, eh?
But it was a gig, and that's why I can pay the rent.
Yeah, that's good.
We can relax on this comfortable couch.
Yeah, that's good. And how many of those do you sort of see a month these days? Those types of gigs.
I used to do
meaning the vibe, not how many gigs you're getting a month.
Not so many. There's a couple of there's a couple of venues where that's the case that I play now. But for me personally, like this year, these kind of last 2 years has been fairly. I've worked consistently, but I haven't consistently been in Sydney doing that circuit.
Okay.
I've been travelling a fair bit, so I haven't done that many of those gigs of late. But they're out there, and again, full credit to them to keep us employed.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Cool. I just want to give a shout out to Jeff, who's just recently did a podcast with you.
Yeah. Likewise.
Yeah. And around the time, you and I had booked to do this, wasn't too long after then that Jeff's podcast came out. And at the time, I didn't know about Jeff Deconstructed Drummer podcast. So
Right, okay.
I was like, oh man, I feel terrible, you know. So
we could sit in silence for an hour.
We could, yeah. But no, all credit to Jeff. You know, he said go for it, and here we are.
Well, I can ramble on.
And the link to his podcast of your interview will be in the show notes of this podcast.
Oh, cheers.
Yeah,
well, while we're talking about it, it's my debut podcast, that one.
Was it? Yeah, it was very
Absolutely.
good too.
And it's funny, I think when I posted it, I was talking, I listen to podcasts a lot, but Cold Case Murders, serial murders, and I can relax to it.
It's light
For
stuff.
better or worse.
Relaxation stuff.
Yeah. For better or worse, I can relax and really delve into that stuff, but it doesn't freak me out at all. I can go to sleep with the graphic details of people being dismembered or just horrible things.
Yeah.
When I say it out loud, it's really bad. But but then Jeff sent me the copy of the podcast I did with him.
Yep.
And the day before it came out, just to see if there was anything I wanted taken out. And I had listened to it, and I've never been so tense in my life.
Yeah.
Listening to anything. I
don't know why
I was so tense by myself just listening to it. My entire jaw clenched, like I was really conscious of. I was trying to relax my muscles, but it would just go from my jaw to my shoulders to my hands.
Wow, man, because it was fascinating. I don't know why you were. I thought it was fantastic.
I don't even remember what I said when I listened back to it.
Yeah, right.
But you know what? And again, credit to Jeff. I've been contacted by a bunch of drummers who I really respect, and people who I've never met and never spoken to have since reached out to me.
Fantastic.
Who enjoyed it, and people from overseas and stuff. So
that's awesome.
That's cool. So the problem, this is the sophomore podcast now. So it's the
Yeah.
second album. There's a lot of pressure here.
Not at all.
I'm taking a different direction.
Yeah.
We'll just go silence.
Yeah, the pressure too for me as the professional podcast interviewer that I am to not ask the same questions, you know. But no,
we'll take it somewhere.
Yeah, of course we will. So let's roll right back, right to the beginning. So you're from Adelaide.
I'm from Adelaide.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm from Adelaide. I wasn't born there. Mm-hmm. I was born in Holland.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, but I was only there for 5 months in Holland.
Okay.
And then I was in Adelaide for the first kind of 28 years of my life, and then I moved to Sydney.
Yep.
And Adelaide is a good breeding ground for all the small cities are a good breeding ground for creatives, you know, because there's not that pressure to be a full-time muso, you know, making your income purely from music, because it'd be quite difficult to do there. And whereas here in Sydney, there's all the industry is here, the labels are here and stuff like that. So there's that pop world that you can be attached to. There's TV stuff you can do. There's all sorts of different elements. So it's easy to get caught up in that.
Yep.
And Adelaide was good in that respect.
Yep.
And I played around the original scene for a long time, and there was a healthy original scene there. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if there still is now, because I don't get there very often. But there was a good original scene, and then I became part of a band which managed to tour around the world a lot, which was, I was very fortunate and learnt a lot from. Yeah, that was back when I was early 20s.
Yeah,
I think.
Yep. And when did you start? When did you start playing?
I think I started playing when I was 12. Okay. I just borrowed a floor tom and a snare. Yeah. Off a friend. Yeah. And they were terrible. That's all I had, I think, floor tom and a snare. Yeah. And I remember the floor tom legs were like held on by some really thick twisted wire. And I remember one day cutting myself on this wire, probably when I was about 13, really badly, like really deep in my calf. And I'm pretty sure if I looked for it, I'd still see the scar. But it was like this really deep cut. Yeah. And that was my first drumming injury. But that's the only two drums I had, a floor tom and a snare. Yeah. Yeah. And I remember at some point I bought a kit in the Trading Post. Is Trading Post New South Wales as well? I imagine it's a national thing, right? Trading Post?
I think so, yeah.
It was like the classified sort of section of the paper, like the Trading Post. buy it for 80 cents once a week or something. And I bought my first kit off there when I was, I don't know, maybe 14 or 15.
What was it?
It was a pearl, not Maxwin, dolphin. It was a pearl. It was an early pearl. And like full vintage, people would probably froth over it now. But I got it for 200, and the symbols that it came with were probably worth like 700. So I was happy with that, but I didn't really know anything about it. I remember my mum driving me out to this place, like probably half hour out of town, and buying this old kit, and I was so happy, and I think my neighbours were so unhappy. And my mum, I don't know whether she was happy or unhappy, but she tolerated it, and for that I'm grateful.
Yeah, that's cool. And your father was a drummer, yes?
My father was a drummer. My father was a drummer, and he played. He played a lot of stuff, but his thing was jazz and free jazz. Crazy stuff that I can't listen to, but he did some amazing things, both in US, and he ended up living in Paris. And he played with some really amazing people. He played with Jean-Luc Ponty, played the Steve Lacy band for many, many years. I recently met someone, I might have touched on this on the other podcast, but who filled me in that he'd depped for Tony Williams playing with Miles. And I don't know if that was just a rehearsal or what it was, but it happened, and that's a feather in the cap for him for sure. But I don't play drums because my dad played drums. You know, I met my dad once when I was 20, and then once when I was when I was 10.
So he wasn't around? No,
he wasn't around. So I was born in Holland. My mum was living in Europe with my dad in France, in Paris, and then shortly after I was born, they separated. Well, Mum wanted to bring me up in Australia, so but back in Adelaide, where she had family and she had sisters, and her parents were there and stuff. So she brought me home.
So your mum's Australian?
Yeah, my mum's white, like 5th generation Australian.
Okay.
Dad's Black American. But was living in Paris. And so there's no like. I mean, he played drums and I played drums, but it wasn't because of that.
Okay.
And my dad. So the first time I met him, when I was 20, I got my first overseas tour. It was a really strange tour. It was this folkloric tour. It was supposed to be a folkloric tour, so it was really supposed to be an Indigenous. It was really supposed to be a representative in Indigenous Australia on this very prestigious, centuries-old touring festival that tours through the Pyrenees, France into Spain, and I don't know. Did I speak? I didn't speak about this on the other podcast.
Not deep. No.
Okay, so I was 20, and we went through. This group got thrown together pretty haphazardly and last minute, and there was an Indigenous contingent within that. But the person who was putting it together really wanted to represent multicultural Australia, which in theory is a really nice idea, but that's not what the festival was about. The festival was honouring and was representative of Indigenous peoples of various lands coming together. And we ended up doing this tour. It was like a 6-week tour, and the information we were told was that it was 3 major festivals and a couple of festivals in between over 6 weeks. And we all went with I think we went with 2 weeks' notice that this thing actually happened. And it ended up, they sent us, the day before we left on tour, they sent us a fax. Back in the day, it was a fax of the itinerary. The itinerary was like 60 pages long or something, and it was all in French.
Hey.
And my mum knew French, having lived there, and so she translated it for us. And it turned out in the 6 weeks we were performing every day except for 2. And we were travelling 2 to 10 hours a day. We had a tour bus and driver and interpreters and stuff. And it was chaos. It was chaos because it was put together poorly. Not the festival. The festival's been running for many years and it's very prestigious, but the person that put together the Australian contingent I think her motives were in the wrong place. She wasn't fully aware of what it was supposed to be, and kind of put it together on a good vibe, you know, that kind of thing. And ended up quitting the tour. That was the first of 2 tours that that was the second of 2 tours that I've quit.
How
I quit
far?
in the
2
weeks in.
2 weeks in.
In the middle of France, out in this small country town. And so I've been sidetracked from my father's story, but this is a story.
Yep.
Things had been going pretty awry on this tour. There'd been fights within the group. There'd been, and there were musicians and dancers. There was fighting because the conditions hadn't been organised properly. The money hadn't been organised properly. It all happened very last minute. There are a lot of newbies. Myself was fairly new to the touring game, and but the kind of very long story short, we're in the south of central France, somewhere in this small town. The tension had been building over weeks between the representatives of the festival, who we had a couple who would travel with us, the organiser of the Australian contingent, and suffice to say, got to a point where I said, I'm done. No one's been paid. This is ridiculous. We're supposed to be a professional outfit. And so myself and a couple of others, we quit as we pulled into this small village. And the mayor from this small village was there to greet us as we got off the bus. And he goes, I hear that there's been some tension on the tour, and I want to assure you everything's going to be okay. I'm good friends with the organiser of the festival, and it's all very friendly and cordial, and a heavy French accent, which I'm not going to try and do. If anyone wants to leave, just know that your passport will be confiscated and your luggage will be confiscated, and you won't be going anywhere. My partner at the time, she was a dancer and she was on the tour as well. She blew her top completely, screaming all sorts of profanities, which I definitely will not repeat, to the mayor of this town, screaming in his face. So eventually 4 of us just went, give us our bags. No one's taken our passports or our luggage. We're going. The mayor yelled at us, it's like, you're not coming inside for breakfast, because they'd prepared this big breakfast for us in this town hall. It's like, and that was like the last straw. Like, it threatened us with the passports, it threatened us with the luggage.
Not the breakfast.
And the last kind of parting shot was, and you can't come in for breakfast, you know. And so we're left standing out by this tour bus in this car park at this town hall. And we decided to try and call the local taxi in this small town, you know. As it turns out, the mayor had called the 2 taxi companies that exist and told them not to pick us up, right? For hours, we tried calling, we tried walking around the town trying to find taxis. No one would pick us up. Eventually we found this little like caravan park and asked them to call the taxi. And they called the taxi, and then we just jumped in it and we got out of there. You know, it was a pretty eye-opening experience. All that was to say, that was the first time I really met my dad.
Okay.
Within 3 hours of me landing in Paris on the first day of that tour, because we flew into France first. My dad showed up at the hotel, and I don't know, he must have spoken to my mum about it, but he showed up at the hotel, and it was cool, you know. No, that was the second time I met my dad. Sorry, I was 20. That was the second time I met my dad, and he showed up at the hotel and took me down to his local bar. He was an alcoholic.
Okay.
He was an alcoholic, and he was fairly far gone by that stage. But he took me down to this local bar and introduced me to all his barfly mates, and who had all heard about me for years. You know, my dad would tell stories. My dad kept 2 things on him all the time. One was this leather bag that was full of loose photos of his 4 sons. There's 4 of us. And we all have different mums. There's no overlap. There's about 7 to 10 years between all of us. And the youngest lives in France still. And then me, I'm the second youngest. Then the other two live in California, but different parts of California, different mums. And he carried this bag of loose photos of us, and everyone that he spoke to at his local bars, he'd just talk about his sons. It was the things he was most proud of. And that was pretty weird for me, because the first time I met him, I was 10. And we went to San Francisco. And my dad's from Bay Area, Oakland, originally. But he was living in France still, but he flew over flew back to San Fran to see me. Mum was over there for some work stuff. And I was 10, and I remember the next day, I was going to Disneyland. That's all that was on my mind. I was going to Disneyland. I met my dad, and it was kind of neither here nor there. I was going to Disneyland. I was excited about that. This guy's your father. Okay, cool. My mum raised me by herself, and that was all I ever needed. I didn't need anything more.
Yep.
I mean, had I had a dad, who knows? It's a completely benign question, really. I don't know.
Yep.
I don't know who I'd be. If I grew up, it would be a different thing. I might be a really amazing drummer, because he was an amazing drummer, but I might have hated it and decided to do something else. So my mum raised me herself, and I have no regrets about that. So then, just talking about my father some more. I was on tour in London in 2002, and I was sound checking. I was on stage by myself, sound checking drums at Shepherd's Bush Empire, famous venue. The Beatles are, all this, so much history in this venue. And my manager came out and handed me the phone and said, "Your mum's on the phone," which it was weird in itself, because this was back before mobiles was you'd never call an international mobile,
Yep.
ever.
Yep.
You just wouldn't do it.
Yep.
So I knew it was something serious. And Mum had just found out that my dad was dead, and that was a really surreal thing for me, because I didn't really know how to feel about it. And that was in 2003, and all these years later, I still don't really know how to feel about it, because he wasn't really a part of my life. And I'd been, at that stage, I'd been on the road for, I don't know, probably 3 months, I think. Mm-hmm. The shortest tour we would do would be 3 months back then. And it would have been 3 months. We'd been in America, that's it. We'd been in America for 3 months. Then we flew to London to do a week of this special show at Shepherd's Bush Empire and a couple of other things. And I knew I had another 2 weeks left of the tour. A week in London, and then a week in back in Austin for South by Southwest.
Oh, cool.
Which I did in 2003 the first time. And funny thing is, I did it again this year.
Oh, did you? Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
It's a buzz.
And so, I get told this news. It was really weird. Everything just sort of just went silent. For the rest of the day, we did a concert. We did this show, but my head was obviously elsewhere. I remember going up to the backstage room after I'd checked the drums and about to tell everyone else, and I was just silent. I didn't tell anyone. I don't know how you'd even tell that to someone. I don't even know how to, even talking about it now, it's weird to just say, "Oh, my dad was," because what I found out within a few days later was my dad was murdered.
Oh, shit.
So,
fuck.
This is why I don't talk about it that often.
Okay.
Because I don't have a problem talking about it, but when people ask me, when it gets onto your dad, you have to be conscious of what their reaction is going to be, because most people's reaction will be, "Oh, you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm actually fine. It was a long time ago. It wasn't part of my life, but it was a weird thing, And funnily enough, there's a bunch of silver linings, as weird as that sounds, to the situation. He wasn't well. He was pretty far gone by then, with alcoholism. And anyway, I'm on this tour, and I play the show, and I can't remember if I told the band before or after the show. anyway, I told them, and of course everyone was sort of pretty weirded out and shocked. And I just said to my manager, look, just we were doing it on the cheap. We were staying at people's houses and stuff like that, and it's kind of spread out a bit. I just said to my manager, I just need a hotel. Just get me a hotel. And we had 3 days off before flying back to America. I pretty much stayed in my room for 3 days and just talked to my mum back home. And
how was your mum?
How was my mum?
How was your mum? Yeah.
She was pretty upset.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think we always had mum, myself, and my brothers always had some sort of fantasy of like getting dad and bringing him to Australia or bringing him somewhere and all of us being together, because it never happened, right?
Yeah.
And you know, I think she was just keen to see me. You know, she was obviously upset. You know, there was no bad blood between them. He was just, I think, a difficult person to be with by that time. I mean, when they separated, which was 40 years ago. So I then went from London back to Austin to play this last week of South by Southwest, and I was holding up. I was doing fine. You know, I was completely fine. Within half an hour of me getting on the plane to come home, I lost it. Like by losing it, I mean, I got really sick. And I think it was my body like just holding it together to finish the mission, so to speak,
gotcha,
you know.
And then just crashing, yeah.
And I got like really sick, the sickest I've been on a plane. And I've flown a lot, and I was really, like, I threw up. I made it to the bathroom, fortunately. I threw up. Fever was spiking through the roof. And somehow, I can't remember, we must have flown with Air New Zealand or something, but we flew home via New Zealand. And I remember we had 4 hours off in New Zealand, and I made it to the bathrooms almost on my hands and knees. And there was a shower in there. I just sat on the floor of the shower for like 2 hours between flights, just a wreck. And then I got home, you know, I just had to see, you know, I got home, Mum was at the airport, so that was great. I got to see her, and, you know, and then I had to, within an hour, I was on stage sound checking for this, closing out the Adelaide Festival with the same band I'd been touring with. So I kind of mentioned the silver linings. The silver linings is the one thing Dad wanted in his life, from my understanding, is that he wanted all 4 of us to be together, all 4 boys. There's 4, we're all boys, all his sons. And there was a memorial concert for him in Paris. They held 2 memorial concerts for him in Paris, the jazz community, really, the musicians community. And we all flew back to Paris. This is probably 2 months after his death. And we all flew back to Paris. And we took our mums. We all took our, well, all but the oldest. She'd remarried and had another child. And, you know, at the time didn't feel like it was the right thing to do. It was a long time ago for her that they were together. And but the rest of us took our mums, and we rented an apartment right in the middle of Paris, all together. And this was the first time Mum had met any of them, and that any of them shared space, that's for sure, you know. And so there are us 4 boys, and we all slept on the floor in the lounge room next to each other as if we were like 4 kids, like in primary school. We just slept on the floor in sleeping bags next to each other, and the mums took the bedrooms. And in hindsight, that was fraught with danger. But it was one of the most beautiful experiences to this day that I've ever had.
Awesome.
All of us being there together. And we had some nights out where we would go. We did this over 2 nights. We went into all the spots my dad used to play at, and where he'd since, I think, been banned from playing, was now a barfly, you know. But they knew he was a little bit of a local legend. But and we'd walk into these places and they'd know who we were instantly, because he'd shown them all the photos over these years. Yeah. Some of them had photos up of us. They'd put up in kind of, they'd put photos of Dad's up after he passed. They all had this one photo of Dad up, and then one of them had printed out photos of us, which was kind of weird to walk into that situation. And we'd walk in, and like the manager would take one look at us and burst into tears. You know, it was this really surreal night, super powerful and strange and beautiful and sad all at once. And that was the first time all four of us were together. And to this day, it's the last time all four of us have been together.
Yeah, well.
We've managed to get various groups of threes, but never since have all four of us been together. But we all talk all the time.
That's
now,
great.
like we're super close.
That's cool.
And I didn't really connect with any of them until my first tour of the States, which was when I was 23. So now I have this sort of global family of you know, there's four mothers who I can call on at any stage, and my brothers who I try and get to see at least once a year, if not once every 2 years.
Yep. Which
means a trip to Europe and a trip to America. But the next, we're now talking about like, and I brought one of them out here. Two of them have been here. My oldest brother, I really want to bring out here. And we're talking about having a big family holiday in Asia somewhere, meeting in the kind of in the middle, sort
awesome.
of, you know,
yeah.
and just doing it, which would be great, and everyone bringing their families.
That's
so
cool.
that's penciled in for next year.
Cool.
Now it's been penciled in for a few years, every year, but I'm feeling good about next year.
Cool. Are they musicians?
They're not musicians, but they connect to my oldest brother. He's a radio DJ in Oakland. Oakland is kind of the heart and soul of a lot of the sort of neo soul music and just great music.
Yeah.
You know, out of California.
Oakland folk, man.
You know, and my brother's connected to all those guys. You know, he introduced me to Raphael Sadiq and Dwayne Wiggins and like, and when I say introduced me to we're there together. He grew up with them. They're family friends and other guys who now tour the world with some of the biggest artists he's introduced me to. So I've met them through him and are now good friends of mine. And so he knows everything there is to know about jazz particularly, but soul, spoken word, black music. He knows it all. He's an encyclopedia of it, and he's super well respected in the community there. And then that's Greg Bridges, and Kendrick Johnson is the next oldest, and he's a production manager. He lives in San Diego. And you know, when I started, I didn't meet him until I was 23 on the first tour of the States I did. And in the 5 years I was touring States and Canada from 2000, it was 2000 I met him. From 2000 to 2005, I would cross paths with him in America on the road, both of us on the road. Probably 6 or 7 times at different locations around the country. And then I would always, at the end of a tour, I'd go and stay with him for a week, or before a tour, or if I had a hold in a tour, I'd go and stay with him. And I still do that to this day, you know. And so he's a production manager for super huge events, like one of the gigs he was doing for a long time was the fan fest for the baseball league over there, whatever they call it. It's the American League and the baseball, whatever it is. And you know, so this would be this big conference, this big fan fest that would go for a week, where he'd have a venue that's, you know, 8 times the size of Hordern Pavilion, and he'd be in charge of running all the production stuff. So he was connected. My oldest brother was connected, and then my youngest brother is he works in logistics, handling logistics for conferences and stuff like that, travel logistics and accommodation logistics and stuff. So, you know, I've always had this little dream in my head that one day I'd love to form a company with all my brothers, because I think between us we'd be able to handle all the bits. Yeah,
I reckon you could. Yeah.
So yeah, and you know, we're all connected now quite regularly, and technology has just made that so wonderfully easy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, truly. So yeah, man, music has been kind of the backdrop to my life, really.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking about it then, like all those kind of things happened because I was touring, and you know, in terms of me getting to meet them, and I'm sure I would have met them anyway. I know I would have. I was always aware of them, and they were aware of me.
Yep.
But that allowed me, particularly particularly for that period to like keep going. I kept getting back. I was in the States 2 to 3 times a year. Like I was doing 2 to 3 tours a year there for 3 to 6 months. And so I got to form great bonds with them at a later stage in life, which is, for better or worse, it is what it was. And, you know, it was really nice. We were all grown up and could relate straight on the grown-up level, which was fantastic. I remember very clearly the first day I met Kendrick. I'd spoken to him and said, you know, I'm your brother from Australia. Over email, you know, I'm coming to the States. It'd be great to meet you. And I'd met my oldest brother once when I was 10, and around the same time I met my dad. And so him and I already had a connection. We didn't speak often because, you know, email didn't exist, text messaging, WhatsApp didn't exist, and international phone calls were like you wouldn't do it, you know.
Yep.
You do it once a year on a special occasion.
Yep.
And plus, I was, you know, that was when I was 10, and he's much older than me,
okay.
You know, so there was a big age gap. It's just, we didn't have any real connection other than we were brothers. So it was good to make that connection again when I was older, and, you know, we could relate on that level. But anyway, I'm in Long Beach, California. I have a day off on tour, and my hotel phone rings, and it's my brother Kendrick, who I've never met in my life, and I've spoken to once on email saying I'm coming to the States. And he goes, "Is this Yanya?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "This is your brother Kendrick." It's a much deeper American accent than me. You know, it's much deeper voice and American accent. I won't do that one. And he's like, "Oh, I was just talking to your older brother. He said you had a day off, and I know we're supposed to see each other. We're supposed to meet next week, but I've got a day off. I live a couple of hours away. I'm going to come up and get you." And he drove up and picked me up and took me down to his house. He just had his daughter. She was like 3 months old, and from the second I met him, I knew that I kind of knew where I fit with him. Like, he was my older brother, and I knew that he would look after me no matter what, within minutes of me meeting him, which was really bizarre, you know. And then I had on that same tour, my younger brother from France, him and his mum came over and met us on the road somewhere. I think I was on that tour, but we were in Edinburgh for a bit, UK, and they caught the train over from France, and I met my little brother for the first time, and he couldn't speak any English at the time either. But I knew instantly that I was his older brother and that I would always look after him, you know, or I had that feeling instantly. So they're the silver linings in this sad thing that happened with my dad.
Yeah.
And I know that he would be happy with the fact that we're now all connected. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Good times.
Fantastic, man. That's bloody awesome.
This is a darker podcast, this one.
Yeah, man. It's all good. We'll go anywhere. Oh, I like that. It was good. Now, who are your musical influences?
In terms of drumming? Or
just in general, music?
I always find that one a tricky question, because it can change very easily.
Yeah. No, I'd say, okay, so I'll simplify it a bit.
Yeah.
Who were the early influences that are still there now? You always find yourself going back to them.
Yeah, sort of.
Another.
I don't know if I do go back to them, but when I came up, man, I came up in Adelaide. I know I spoke about this on the other podcast a bit. Adelaide doesn't have a big market. There's not a lot of people of colour there, and there's not the music scene. There's not a lot of soul music. There's not a lot of black music, so to speak. So I went through a full stage of like hair bands, you know, listening to like the heavy metal, like the soft heavy metal bands. When I was in like year 7, year 8 probably, and yeah, I knew. Embarrassed to say, but I knew all those albums. I really missed. I missed I skipped the Hendrix and the Doors thing.
Right.
I skipped it. Like I fully skipped over it.
Yep.
And the Beatles, and I put some of that down to for better or worse, I put some of this down to like I never did that stage of experimenting with, like, I never started drinking at a young age. I didn't start smoking. And the circle that I saw around me all delved into that kind of that psychedelic thing, and the music of those sort of that were, you know, the pinups for that era.
Well said.
You know, and I skipped it. I was at school. I was playing sport pretty heavily, so I was pretty athletic and more focused on that than anything else.
Yep.
And so I skipped that whole thing. So I missed that era of stuff.
Okay.
It was more like the 80s kind of vibe. My mum used to listen to a lot of singer-songwriter stuff, Joni Mitchell. But I remember this one album that was always on in the house, which was the soundtrack to the movie The Harder They Come.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the Peter Tosh. So reggae. It was a collection of reggae artists. Yep. But there's this album that I just remember being on all the time, and then I remember much later in life being on tour somewhere and someone having this album on in their house, and like it all instantly came back to me. I was like, I haven't listened to this album in 15 years, and all of a sudden I know every song. And I got into Midnight Oil.
Oh yeah.
I spoke about this on the other one, but like Rob Hurst as a drummer was someone that I really he was one of the ones that really sparked for me. You know, I think his delivery is different than anyone else. He plays very musical. The Whispering Jack album, John Farnham's Whispering Jack album.
Yep.
Angus Birchall on drums on that. Like those two, I credit for a couple of the people that really got me into.
Yeah, I know what you're saying about Angus as well, and that particular album. Around the time that came out, was one Christmas. We got these coloured markers for Christmas, and it had like this sort of a scratchy thing on the back. So I scratched it. You've won a Sony Walkman.
Yes.
Yes, I sent away and I get this Sony Walkman, and it had a instant reversing of the tape, and
that was high tech.
It was high tech, man, and it was awesome. And Dad took me down to the shop, and I just saw this. Saw the cover there with this guy with blonde hair, and didn't really know who he was. So
golden
that looks
locks,
cool.
mate. Golden locks.
Well, it was because the Whispering Jack is that. The silhouette.
Yeah. Well, I had the singlet. When I was 12.
With the cutout or the cutout?
Yeah, super low.
Beautiful.
Just the album cover of the print there.
Oh, that's great. So and then I wore that tape out.
Yeah.
It was just fantastic. Yeah.
Man,
Town Called Trouble was my favourite song on that.
Oh yeah. I had this, that was a great track.
Yeah.
I had this live recording, and I must have taped it off SAFM. It was in Adelaide. That was like the Oz Stereo station in Adelaide.
Yep.
Right. They must have done like a live broadcast, and I recorded it on my cassette deck.
Yep.
And I wore that tape out, and I knew the banter. I knew every word. Yep. Every time he introed someone, I knew it backwards. And I was just saying this to someone yesterday, actually. Like, it was the first big concert that I remember. I saw Farnham when he was playing the Adelaide Grand Prix before it moved to Melbourne. He was closing out Adelaide Grand Prix. I was 12 and I went to the concert, and I knew this tape backwards. I knew every part of it, and I felt like I knew him. And it was the first time. Like I had that moment where I was watching him, and I'm in the crowd, like 60,000 people. And my friend had taken me, and I was like, he doesn't have a clue who I am. I thought we were mates. I really thought we were mates.
John.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I'm here. I got the T-shirt.
Yeah. Like I'm that guy that listens to you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Me and everyone else.
Yeah, man.
Funny. After that, what did I get? I never really delved into hip-hop ever.
Okay.
I never really got into it. Remember, there was a couple of Run DMC things I liked, or I liked the Run DMC Aerosmith collab, Walk This Way. That was a great track. There was a band at school. There was like the school band that played some AC/DC and some Angel stuff.
Yeah.
And some stuff from the Blues Brothers.
Yep.
So I listened to it. What they weren't necessarily influences, but I remember playing them at a very young age.
Yep.
Not very well, but I was playing them. I was in the band
Yep.
at school, and I was like 3 or 4 years younger than everyone else in the band. We were playing these songs. I had no idea what was going on.
Yep.
And we'd play the school parties, the various school parties, playing Angel songs and AC/DC and Blues Brothers.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And then I remember getting into, I think it was the Born in the USA album, Springsteen.
Yeah, man.
I vaguely remember wearing that one out.
Yep.
And
I had the vinyl of that one.
then I definitely went down a pop road at some stage, but I can't really, when I think about it, I can't even think what I was into in my, in the years where I was starting to really play music. Eurythmics, I thought that was a great album.
Yeah.
They had a couple of great albums I really liked.
Clever, eh?
Yeah, some fantastic stuff. There was a band, Super Groove. You know
man.
Super Groove?
Yeah, man.
Man, I love them.
Yep.
And I know Jonesy.
You do? Yeah, I'm going to be talking to him soon.
Yeah, Super Groove, Shofu.
Yep.
I remember getting into that big. And the band, I really was a fanboy of this band, The Truth. Do you remember the band, The Truth?
Yep.
I know all those guys now. They're my,
right.
they're mates. It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
And I bumped into Tony Coper, the singer, a few weeks ago down in Melbourne, and he was saying to whoever I was with, I think I was down, we were on a Tina Arena gig, so this was beginning of the year.
Yep.
And I was down playing for her, and he was playing at the same event. And he came and was talking to, I think, Tina and myself, saying, Yanya used to be the biggest fanboy of our band whenever we'd go to Adelaide, and I was that annoying kid, for sure. At the time, I was pretty sure I reckon I was the cool kid.
Yeah.
But when I look back, I was that annoying kid.
You're that kid
that would show up at the
they
gig
talked about
and want to hang out.
He's here.
Yeah, 100%.
He's here. Come on, let's go pretend that we're...
Me and my mate. Yeah, 100%. Oh, not him again. Yeah, that was definitely me.
Yeah.
Took me a while. It was a real slap in the face when I realised that, when I had that moment. It was like, oh, shit, I was that guy.
Yeah.
But I was a huge fan of that band. And, yeah, they were fantastic. And then, it wasn't until I started touring in the States that I had this one night off on the road. I'll touch on this very briefly because I did speak about it in the other one, but
okay.
I saw Jill Scott live.
Okay.
And it really changed it was a pivotal moment for me, where I after the concert I ran home and I got on my Hotmail account and I emailed all my friends on their Hotmail accounts and said, I've just seen the most amazing thing, because, we didn't have access to it through, YouTube didn't exist.
Yep. Pre-streaming.
Of course. This was 2000.
Okay.
Remember when 2000 was the future?
Yeah,
remember
man.
when that sounded like that was the future?
I know.
Yeah, flying cars.
Yeah, right.
But I remember just contacting all my muso friends and saying, I've just had my mind blown. I was super inspired,
Yep.
By then I feel like my bad habits had developed too far for me to change my approach to playing or my approach to practice,
right?
Which is not something that I've ever really done. That's one thing I regret, is that I never developed a really good discipline for practice. And I think had I grown up with my dad and persisted with drums,
sure,
I think that's one thing that I would have had.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But that was the first time I saw that gospel style of playing, and it just blew my mind. And that was a guy called Eric Trebet playing drums. And he was a year younger than me, and that killed me too, because I was like, I can never aspire to get to his level by the time I'm his age, because he's already a year younger than me. Right. But I got to meet him after the show, and then we stayed in contact, and I got to sit in on some rehearsals with him other times when we returned to Philadelphia on tour over the next few years.
Right.
And he took me to a jam with Questlove in Philly one night.
Really?
I got to hang out with Questlove, and I'm hanging out with Questlove. It's crazy. And music is a real journey, hey.
Absolutely.
it allows us to, and touring, but not even touring, just doing corporates around Sydney, it allows us to step into other people's lives and other people's, you know, one minute you might just be doing a bar gig, the next you're doing a corporate where you're playing for the Prime Minister, and you're, you know, surrounded by the very important people, supposedly. And you really get to transport yourself into different worlds, and that was one of those examples. Because I was touring and stuff, I managed to be at this jams, Questlove Jam, and hang out with him for a little bit, and that was kind of nuts. But yeah, that really kind of, that's when I really got to, that opened my eyes to the whole gospel thing.
Right. Yep.
You know, which I profess to not doing very well at all.
Sure. Yeah.
But I love listening to it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I like that approach to drumming.
Yeah, that's cool. Now you play for Tap Dogs.
Oh, I played a few shows for Tap Dogs.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
I played a few special shows. So Joe Acaria, do you know Joe Acaria?
I know of
Sydney
Joe.
drummer.
I don't know Joe.
Hilarious human being, and someone you should definitely interview, because that guy's got stories.
Okay.
Without a doubt.
Yep.
But he's sort of like the musical director for Tap Dogs.
Okay.
And has been kind of all along, you know, and still works closely with Dean Perry and the drummers who are playing for Tap Dogs now. I think they've got some female players. Joe put them in there and trained them up, and him and Dean have a really close relationship. So I have played a couple of Tap Dog things, but we did this one big one down in the Darling Harbour on the floating stage, where we got to have, there were 4 drummers up on really big scaffolds playing, like we had like the sort of traditional drum kit stuff, and then there was like percussion stuff, and maybe all various forms of percussion stuff, you know, on 4 big towers. So I got to rehearse with them for a bit and played with them a couple of times, I think, but it's not necessarily, I wasn't the drummer for Tap Dogs.
Okay, that's cool. Now, see, with that then, what that's sort of bringing me to is that stuff you're playing to a click? Or who sort of leads that? The drummer's leading it, or you're following the Tap
Dog? Well, in Tap Dogs,
the Tap guys?
It was a long time ago, so I'm trying to think how... There's
you
tracks.
know what I mean, eh?
Yeah.
You've got these...
There's tracks that they play to.
Yeah.
You know, extra musical stuff, but there's only they don't have a band on there. I mean, the show's evolved many times. I know they're over in London at the moment, so I'm not sure what format they're running. But back then, they had tracks with all the hits and the kind of stuff on it.
Right.
So we would be playing to track, and therefore with click as well.
Okay, because I'm just trying to work out how the timing of it would go.
Yeah, well, then they have their own, like the drummers weren't in everything. Then they'd have their own whole sections. Right. Then there'd be sections where we worked together.
Yeah.
Then there'd be stuff where it was just us.
Yeah.
Mm. But, I mean, that was a cool experience. That was something I did that, and then I've done 1 or 2 things with there's kind of a breakaway group of those guys as well who were doing more of a pop show.
Yep.
But also incorporated a lot of tap stuff. I got to work on that. And, that's just cool. It's cool to step out of your regular world and do something like that, because I mean, really, on a show like that, the drumming and the accompaniment is secondary to the amazing stuff that these guys are doing.
Yeah, that's what I was sort of getting to. Are you kind of, as a drummer, following their dancing? In
that scenario, you're following what is the parts that you're taught to play, really. So how they came about, I'm not exactly sure.
Okay.
That would have been in collaboration with Joe, who was MDing.
Yep.
And the Dean and the dancers.
Yep.
So you kind of taught parts.
Sure.
So I wasn't involved in any of the kind of workshopping.
Okay.
That particular thing.
Cool.
But you should definitely get Joe on and have a chat to him, because he's done a wide range.
Is he overseas?
Right now he's overseas. Yeah. In fact, he's overseas. He's the musical director for a show called Velvet.
Yep.
And they're installing that on the cruise ship over in Miami.
Right.
So he's auditioned the international cast.
Cool.
And is over there running the rehearsals and putting the show together, and then it sets sail.
Right.
So.
And then he comes home, yeah?
Then he comes home, but I think once every 6 months he travels to wherever the boat is and has to check in, make sure everything's good, and
cool.
You know,
I'll try and catch him when he gets back.
Yeah, you definitely
cool.
should. He's a wealth of information and hilarious dude.
Yep.
Yeah.
Boston Project Management, BPM.
Okay, so this is a very new
thing. Yep.
Well, but the name is a new thing.
Okay.
I've been thinking about in my years. I've done more than just drumming. You know, I end up, whether it be I do some musical direction stuff for people now. I do some track prep stuff, like in you know, figuring out stems and tracks and playback rigs.
Yep.
I've done band management as well, and liaising often the tour managing projects as well, and you know, all sorts of extracurricular stuff. And I've been asked to manage bands quite a bit actually, and it's a thankless job. I've worked with some really great managers and some not so great ones too, but it's a tough job and it's a lot of responsibility, and I feel like I don't think I'm ready for that yet. However, project management I view as a different thing. It's not like you're not responsible for someone's career. It's like if someone comes to me and says, okay, I need to develop my show, or I need this, or a client comes and says, we need a band for this event that's going to do this, that and the other.
Yep.
It's just something I've found that I can do quite naturally. I'm comfortable with communicating with people and just getting things done fast, and I think a lot of that I learned from the manager of my first band. I watched how she operated on the road, and we had an independent band that, you know, had no money, and we managed to survive for 5 years playing all over the world and selling merch and learning how to do it the best way possible with what you have. And then on the other side, I've worked for labels where I see managers involved who are spending money left, right and centre that's essentially coming out of the artist's money somewhere along the line, and they're not thinking about, the managers aren't thinking about that. They're just spending money. Oh, we've booked the wrong backline stuff. That's all right. You don't have to use it, but we have to pay for it. You know, I've seen that stuff happen far too often. I've been on tour with pop artists where the band will go out to eat dinner, but the artist can't afford to come and eat. So we've bought them dinner. You know, we've had to buy them dinner, and happily too, because they should be eating with the. You know, I've seen that stuff happen too much, and so I think whatever I've learned in my guerrilla style of organisation or management or tour management or whatever it is I'm doing, it's all self-taught, and it's all just from watching other people achieve it with very little resources, or watching people with a lot of resources achieve it and spend way too much money or whatever. So I've been trying to think of how I can bring that all in under one umbrella, and my latest sort of incarnation thinking around that is BPM, which will be Boston Project Management, which when the phone stops ringing for playing drums, which will happen eventually, you know, that's a big reality and fear, and it's just it's a natural progression. Yeah, I'm going to have to do something else, and I'm not going to work in an office, because who would hire me? Like, I work in my own office. Yeah, yeah. You know, these words might come back to haunt me, because you might come to Macca's drive-through and there I'll be taking your order one day or something. You know, you know, that is something that I think about, as you know, every day I wake up one day older, and I'm going, what am I going to do like for the rest of my life? Yeah. That said, you know, I've had that thought a lot, and this year, you know, I've been to 19 countries, of which I've played in 18 of them. You know, music has taken me to, and had you asked me in the beginning of the year if that was happening, I would have had no idea that was happening. Okay, right. So a lot of it's short term. Well, it's not short notice sort of. Yeah, my point being is that you never really know what's going to happen. You know. Right. And in saying that, I'm working on a few projects which I see longevity in, and artists who I really believe in, who I'm pouring my energy into as well, because I believe in them, but also it's something I'm a part of. I like being a part of something. It's great. It's also great being like the hired gun for some things. I do a little bit of that. Not as much as some, more than some others. It is what it is. And that's cool and all, but there's no kind of, it's not as fulfilling. You know, it really isn't. Like, for me, creating something or being part of the creation of something and working towards an end goal, whether that end goal is world domination or it's, we get to do a gig in a bigger venue, or it's we get to do an interstate thing, just so that you're always building. And I really love that feeling of having, like, forming a, I guess it's like forming a band, but it's not quite, because I'm still working for artists, but artists that I really believe in and who appreciate me, and where there's two way they take on my opinion and vice versa, and that stuff is I find really fulfilling. It might not fulfill the bank as much, and
right.
And that's where you got to strike a balance between that and just doing the covers stuff.
You got to come back and do a Melbourne Cup gig.
Yeah, which is cool, and there's really, absolutely each to their own. Some people, some people have families to support and all that stuff. So man, go out and earn every cent you can. The fact that we can make a living doing this, those of us who are lucky enough to be able to make a living doing this, puts us in a very small percentile in the world. And so we're very lucky. And in Australia, even with all the no vibe shit that's going on here, we can still do it, which is pretty good.
That's what I was going to ask about too, was, that, did you guys predict what was going to happen to the scene? Did you sort of see it coming?
You're talking about with the lockouts and stuff? Well, for me, see, I've done a lot of, outside of all the, I always have at least something original that I'm focusing on with someone, at least one thing. At the moment, I've got 3, which is beautiful.
Yep.
But I've done there were stages where I had 5 residencies at the same, and so I was playing all, regular resident gigs as well as club gigs with DJs and all that kind of stuff. So when that lockout thing came, that for me, that really affected me instantly.
More so than other people that.
Well, because I was doing
the club stuff.
The club stuff, real late stuff. I had 2 residencies which were really late. I could do other gigs in front of it, and then I could do those gigs, which is they pay the rent and they help fund my lifestyle. Yeah. So you got to do them, and so when those lockouts came in, so I felt the effects of that instantly. All right, instantly. And then I think, man, I don't know if I really sat down and predicted how, there was a lot of talk, it's going to kill the scene, but I don't know if any of us really thought about it, went, right, yeah, it really is, and it really has. Yeah. I mean, it's killed a lot. And, I think that the downturn in the scene has been happening for a long time. If you ever hear the stories of the 80s here in Sydney, I wasn't here. But, we're going back a generation. If you hear those stories, it was gig to gig to gig to gig to gig, all through King's Cross. And, I think there's been a decline for a long time, but that curve escalated massively with the lockouts. And I think it's just shit house. Yeah. Really? I mean, it really is. It's embarrassing. Yep. That Sydney is this no vibe city, the biggest city, the international city in inverted commas of
no vibe
Australia.
City. I haven't heard that. That's cool.
And today was a perfect example. The gig I had to do earlier today, and King's Cross doesn't exist anymore. And I think not that was somewhere I would frequent often, but I think that every city needs that area. Call it the sleazier side or whatever. Every city. That's part of what makes up culture, you got the extremes and everything in between. Yeah. And you need that. And, some say it was a really violent place. Others say it was a really safe place because there was so much security around.
So many people. And people. Well. Yeah.
I know there's arguments for and against, but come on, it's ridiculous. It is. Yeah. The state we're in at the moment is ridiculous. Yeah. And government's finally starting to like notice.
I've
But
noticed that.
it's going to be a long time before they can get it back. And I think there's a lot of pride involved too. Like no one's ready. They'll drip feed bits back into our nightlife, but it's a long time before it can build up, and whether it will ever be. I mean, it has to. Everything is cyclical, right? Mm-hmm. It has to come back around. But we're in a tough spot, and we have some of the greatest musicians here across all different scenes. You know, we really do. There's people I'm absolutely in awe of that are playing cover gigs around, and again, no judgment on that. Make the money, I do them. I take them, absolutely. But my point being is that there should be more avenues for those people who are so great to be able to be creative and earn money and do that stuff. I mean, really, the Monday Jam crew, that's been running for years. That's fostered some amazing talent through there. The house band is always great musicians, and it's rotated through a few different people at times, but it's always of a certain caliber, and they, it's inviting emerging talent to come up, and it's an institution here now. That's amazing. So there's that whole crew, which is really amazing. There's the rock circuit, which I have nothing to do with really, but there's some really world-class players within that. There's everything here. But the outlets are few and far between. A lot of people are moving to Melbourne or London. People are going to slog it out in London to give that a shot.
Right.
That's a hard slog in itself, but people are yearning for something. Yeah. I hope it turns around.
Yeah.
I really do. Yeah.
Yeah, no plans to leave, eh?
People often ask me, would I, do I ever see myself living in the States? And I've travelled there a lot.
Yep.
Like I've done maybe 15 tours there, and like the shortest tours we would do were 3 months. So I've spent a lot of time. I have some really good friends there, and I have great family there. But I do really like Australia. You know, I do like our way of life. So I don't know. I was in Europe, and a lot of places in Europe this year, which were just beautiful. And ironically, Amsterdam was probably my favourite place that I went to in Europe, and that's where I was born.
Where you born, yeah.
Yeah, and I'd never really been back there.
Okay.
But I just was like, man, I just want to live on one of those. Have you ever been?
I haven't, no.
I want to live on this little houseboat on the river and just live there. The problem is you got to earn income still, and
bummer.
So
bugger that, eh?
Bugger that. At the moment, though, man, I'm really happy here, and I'm managing to pay the rent, so that's good. And I love. I mean, when I fly into Sydney, which at the moment is very often flying back home, flying into Sydney, it's so beautiful to fly into.
Yeah.
And
you're in a good spot here too, close.
Well,
kind of central, you know.
The recording's not picking up well. They've finished the road work for the day, but I mean, for those of you listening, I'm in Alexandria, and we're at the butt end of the West Connects project, which is going to wind up over there. So I think it's not long before all hell breaks loose.
Oh right.
They're talking about this road going from 7,000 cars a day to 60,000. I don't know how they're going to do it. Like, it just doesn't make sense. But it's a good spot in terms of when I moved here, it was fairly industrial. I mean, it's still fairly industrial, but now within a few minutes walk, we've got the grounds here. We've got all these great cafes around. You know, I have very regular lunch meetings with people. Yeah. Meetings. Just at a meeting, which just means going for lunch, catching up with people.
Yeah.
It is a great spot for that. There's no doubt. And stage door rehearsals is
just over there.
Just 200 metres down the street.
Yep.
Bunnings is across the road.
Yes.
That's Saturday, Sunday, sausage sizzle. Mate, that's saving some cash right there.
Yeah. You could, like, BPM could maybe do like a fundraiser.
Do a little fundraiser there.
Yeah. BPM.
Bringing all my staff. It's just me. I just eat it all.
Yeah, just eat it all. Yeah.
But yeah, it is a good area. But, you know, I really I would really love space to play real drums.
Yep.
Somewhere, have a studio, have enough space to play, have a yard, have a dog. Man, I would love to have a dog. So I would love to have a dog. at the moment, travelling as much as I have been, it would be kind of impractical and unfair on the dog.
Yeah.
So I've been thinking about it more and more, you know, moving out to another spot, having some more space, annoying different neighbours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned a while back you played South by Southwest.
Yeah. So I played it this year.
Yeah, yeah.
And I played it in 2002.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
So I played it twice now.
Yeah.
Still, like, the funny thing about that is, if you go to South by Southwest, you know, you're just really battling, you know, and I mean, that same 16 years later, I'm still battling. You know what I mean? Like, you're still going out there trying it, and I'm still loving that. I'm still just as excited about the possibility or the potential that can come with doing something like that, you know. And so this year we went with Thandi Phoenix. She's an artist that I work very closely with. I'm her MD, but we kind of started her project together. And we went to South by Southwest, which it's always, I had my birthday there.
Cool.
So it's always on during that same week in March. And yeah, we had a good time. It was great. We managed to have nine shows with Thandi, which is great. You have the way South by Southwest works is, I mean, it's absolute Wild West out there. You know, there's hundreds of bands, and now there's tech stuff, and there's movie stuff, and there's all sorts of stuff trying to kind of get their launch from there, you know. And you're generally guaranteed, like, if you get accepted, you're guaranteed 2 official showcases, and then you got to try and pick up some of these other parties, you know, these sponsor parties.
Once you get there, that's when.
No, you organise them beforehand. But
oh right, okay, yep.
They're not, but once you get there, still you're hustling to get more. But we managed to get 9 spots with Thandi, which was amazing, and we were lugging a lot of gear around. And the whole city of Austin just, like, it must triple in size. It's and they shut down all the roads and everything, so you're lugging gear, and you might be playing a really great venue one day, and then, like, or, you know, in an afternoon, and then that night you're playing in the shittest, might be a coffee shop, or the front lobby of a hotel, and then the next day in another good venue, and it's literally back a truck. You know, the day we arrived, we walked down this one street, and Grandmaster Flash is DJing out the front of this tiny little bar, just on the street corner outside, DJing, and, like, everyone's just stopped on the street partying, and it's crazy.
That's awesome.
It was crazy. It was a funny time because we stayed in an Airbnb, and you know, often it's hard to tell the distance if you've never been to a place. You know, you don't know the lay of the land. You know, this one was a little bit out of town. I say that in inverted commas. Which meant it was about 45 minutes, 50 minutes on the freeway.
Right.
Like, way out.
Yeah.
Right. And the first time we get there, we're driving out for just what seemed like ages and ages and ages, and we're on a big open freeway, and there's farmland, you know, it's just getting more space around us, and finally we find this pull off, and then we're on this country road for ages, and really large, very large houses, but a very long way away, you know, but money houses, you know. And we finally pull up to our spot. We find our spot, and the guy greets us. That was a little bit weird. They seemed a little bit strange. If anyone watches it, do you watch The Office, the American Office?
Yeah.
Who's the weird guy?
Oh, I can't remember.
You know the weird guy?
Everyone's
listening, you know the weird guy. The super funny weird dude. Dwight Schrute. And, you know, he has his, if you've seen the episode where they go Schrute Farm, which is where he grows his beets, him and his cousin Mose. It felt a little bit like that. They're a little kind of strange, sort of, it felt like maybe we were part of some cult, that we were there on this little farmhouse out in the middle of nowhere. Might have been bodies buried around. Anyway, the house itself was beautiful. It had been made up for Airbnb. You could tell, like, it was all the great photos, all the angles, everything. We got in there. It was really nice. Big, like, 2-story. It was a 2-story place. Master bedroom downstairs, big lounge downstairs. We were hanging out there. Yeah, this is great. Okay, let's check out upstairs. So we go upstairs, and, like, the ceiling, I'm about 6 foot, right? and the ceiling of upstairs is about 4.5 feet. So it was kind of like a dollhouse kind of thing. And there were 2 bedrooms and a bathroom upstairs with like regular beds in them. I mean, single beds, but regular, and chest of drawers and everything. But the ceiling like capped out at about 4.5 feet.
What?
And it was the strangest thing. And oh man, we laughed for many hours about that. And we all had very sore backs and sore heads from bumping heads. You know, like you sit up in bed, bang.
Yeah.
That was a good. We worked our asses off, and that whole thing. We struggled in terms of like we hustled real hard. But for me, those things are the enjoyable. They're the really enjoyable ones. They're the memorable ones.
Yeah.
We went a Daryl Beaton band. I'm not sure if you should interview Daryl for sure.
Been trying.
Yeah, he's a busy man.
He is.
So you lock him down, but we were lucky enough to go to Japan a few times.
Yeah.
And again, like major hustle to do it. The first trip the band went on, I think, was 30 shows in 28 days.
Yeah.
Or something, with
I remember
public transport, trolleys, everything hustling from club to club.
Yeah. I remember seeing some videos of that.
Just crazy. Yeah. I didn't go on the first trip. I went on the next 2.
Okay.
But and they were all equally we were hustling.
Yep.
And it was just that whole thing of a collective working towards something, scraping by, making great music and having a good time with your mates. That's the best. And as opposed to if some of the session stuff we all get to do, it's great and all, and it's good for your profile and stuff like that. But you don't have that personal connection, and you don't have that feeling of satisfaction of, oh man, I just did 30 gigs in 28 days and I made $8 and that's awesome. Feeling really proud of that,
Yeah.
I've been lucky to travel around. I went to Alaska. I've traveled in Alaska.
Yeah. Did you play there?
Yeah. I've toured up there 2 or 3 times.
Right.
That's like where the sun doesn't set in summer.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And there's a real crazy energy because of that, because the other 6 months is darkness. Well, for kind of 3 months, like the sun doesn't come up. So it's darkness all the time. And so there's a pretty intense energy up there. Actually, one time, one of my most favourite touring memories comes from Alaska. Man, I'm trying to think if I spoke about this on the other podcast. But we were travelling from one town to another on this small boat, probably about the size of this room. Like it was a little charter fishing boat. And you could either take a very long road round to get, or you could go point to point on this boat, about a 2-hour trip. And glaciers coming down on one side, forest coming down on the other side, down into the water, and then this little opening which went out to the open ocean. And the captain of the boat, he stops the engine at one point and points and goes, and there's water spouts coming out of the water, and we pull up, and there's whales like 100 metres ahead of us, and they come right up to the boat. I'm talking like 2 metres away from the boat, and pull up right next to us. That was incredible. And I got it all on digital camera, the first digital camera, the first Sony one, cost me a fortune, tiny screen. And my tour bag got stolen later that tour. I lost it all. But man, that was a memory that'll stay with me forever, for sure.
That's cool.
I mean, often I kind of was trying to think about various things to talk about today, and I just keep thinking about what a vehicle the music has been for
Sounds like it.
me and others who have been lucky enough to do it.
Yep.
And it really gets you to different corners of the world. I don't know if I'd ever travel to those places otherwise in any way.
Yep.
I have a lot of respect for people and I've got a bunch of friends who are like, I have a really dear friend in Melbourne who's recently decided she's going to quit a very high paying job and she wants to travel through Europe for 6 months and by herself. And she's just done that. And I could never do that because I've come up with the comfort of generally being with a group and in hotels most of the time.
For a reason.
So I've been really lucky like that, for sure.
Yep. So over your travels, you've met hundreds and hundreds of people. Who are some famous, sort of big name artists, singers?
I've been lucky to meet a lot of super famous drummers, like people I really respect.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. It feels weird name dropping them. It feels weird, but like I got to meet and hang out with Chris Coleman, who's one of the
monster.
Yeah, you're a drummer, you know. And this is through my relationships with Sonar.
Sure.
You know, and I've got to hang out with him a few times now, and we stay in contact over phone every now and then.
He just looks like he's always happy, that fella.
Yeah, that's the energy that he gives off
right.
when you're just hanging out with him too.
Yeah.
I went out to dinner with Jojo Mayer. And when Benny Greb was here, I looked after him when he was here, and Steve Smith and Thomas Lang, lots of those dudes. Chris Dave, I get to hang out with a bit occasionally, and we stay in touch. And I have met lots of they're the musicians, they're the people that I kind of click into as opposed to like the front.
Yep.
And I guess I have met a lot of those people, but I never take photos, and I'll never do that kind of thing of taking photos with them or like raving about that. But one of I reckon the coolest person, I ended up taking Bonnie Raitt out to dinner one time with her.
How did that come about?
Well, her production manager is a friend of mine, lovely, lovely guy, and I met him when he was touring with Angelique Kidjo as well, and I knew someone else in her band, crossed paths with them many times around the world, and he's been her production manager for 20 years for Bonnie Raitt. And so when he was in town with her, we'd organised to go to dinner, you know, and then just before I was picking up, he texted me and goes, "Oh, Bonnie's coming too." Sweet. I mean, she's just the coolest person. She must be 70 now. My mum just turned 70. She's my mum's age. My mum just turned 70. And my mum's very cool too. But Bonnie Raitt, my mum can't play guitar like Bonnie Raitt can play guitar.
Yeah.
But just cool. It was just a really lovely, you know, there was no kind of, I mean, you're not going to be a diva at 70 anyway, are you? You've lived life, you know what's real and what's not, and particularly in her scene. But just what a lovely person, you know. And you know, I went to the show the next. You know, she got me tickets for the show the next day, and I got to take I got to take Karen, which is cool. Who I know you interviewed recently, Karen Lee Andrews, and I got to take Thandi and my girlfriend, and we got to go and see the show, and it was just incredible. I think that song, "I Can't Make You Love Me," is arguably the most perfect song in terms of its delivery, its melody. It's just perfect. And you know, after the show, she had to do this meet and greet thing, and you know, she has to do that stuff. But she sent a runner to come and find me to tell me and my people to just hang out and wait, because she wanted to come and hang out with us and just hang out with us, and like that was just cool. She was just cool, and yeah, I have been lucky to work with or meet lots of super cool people, but she's super cool in terms of someone I just got to meet. I never got to play with her.
Right.
The drummer Ricky Fatah, who plays for her, he's been a long time guy for her, and he's incredible. He used to live in Australia as well, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. Who else? I tell you who's super cool, lucky enough to play for too, Tina Arenas.
Yeah.
He's super cool.
Yeah. Well, tell us about that.
Just super cool. Just so down to earth, and what an incredible artist, and what an incredible body of work she has, and an incredible singer. And I did a bunch of shows for her last year when her tour finished, and she had an all Australian band, and except for the drummer was here from Belgium, I think, and she knew him from when she used to live in France, and they worked together.
Okay.
But then when the tour finished, he went home, and she then had a bunch of stuff in Australia, and I ended up picking up that gig and did a bunch of stuff with her. It was just a real honour to play with her, and the band were really lovely to play with. And you know, anyone who's been doing it for that long is going to be cool. But I like that. I like that. She's really enjoyable to work with, and makes you feel welcome on your first gig or your first rehearsal. And like she did it with me, and then a few shows later we had a new bass player enter the band, and I really got to watch, from now someone who was in the band, I got to watch how she made this person feel so welcome.
Great.
From the outset, and included and equal at all times.
Yeah.
You know, and I just think that's cool. And that's the thing with session gigs, like you never know if you're. I don't know if I think I'm still on the gig. She's been doing different gigs.
Okay.
She's been doing a Vita here in Sydney, and then that's just finished and goes to Melbourne. But I'm hoping that when she picks up doing band stuff again, that I'm still on that. But you never know.
You never right.
You never know. There's no committed agreement.
Yeah. See, with Tina Arena, when I first moved to Australia, it's around the time her first album came out, and that was the soundtrack to the first, say, 3 months of my time in Australia. Yep. And then when we finally moved out of an apartment in Maryland and then moved to Northmead into a house, I was able to set my drums up because my drums had come over on a container.
You're right.
Yeah, so they were here and I could play them. And that album, Daryl Braithwaite's Rise, Whispering Jack, they all came out, man, and that I just jammed.
Was the time, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Whispering Jack had been out much longer than that, but it's just something I pulled out to jam with, you know.
You should talk to John Corniola.
Oh yeah,
who plays for Braithwaite.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Because John Watson used to, didn't he?
Yeah.
Who was I talking to? Oh, I was talking to Adam about this, because Adam played with John Watson. And
yeah, man, Adam is a monster.
Yeah.
I'm lucky enough to get to play with him.
Yeah.
On the currently Andrews gig.
Yeah.
And a bunch of others, actually. We've worked together on lots of different things. But he's just an incredible player. And
absolutely.
Doesn't surprise me that he's played with the best of the best, because he's up there with them.
Humble as.
And he's, you know what, when I play with Adam, even if it's just drums and bass, and I play with him, he plays so percussively as well. So he just places it where it sounds like there's more happening, even when there's not. Just the way he has a really great. He's got a great ear for percussion. He's actually a pretty cool percussionist as well.
Yep.
And you know, he's a powerhouse, and he lays his thumb on that bass is as heavy as my kick drum, so it's equally there. So
have you seen him play with Toru?
Only
with Shane and Raph?
Yeah, only one time.
Lead bassist, man.
Yeah. I've seen him do his lead thing
Raph,
with various things.
Get out of the way, Raph. Ooh.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, we've got, actually, him and I are doing a bunch of shows. Well, you just interviewed Karen, but we're doing, that tour starts this week, I think.
This week,
next week. And we go, it's New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Yep.
She's amazing.
Maybe some stuff next year, she said, but she can't reveal.
I can reveal. There's definitely some stuff next year.
Yeah. No, she said it definitely is, but she couldn't say what it was.
Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Which is great. It's really great. She sent me a whole bunch of dates.
Awesome.
Like for next year already, like into mid-year, some different events and stuff, which is good.
Yep.
She's world class.
Oh yeah.
She is world class.
Something else.
Yeah, truly. Yeah, I'm really lucky to more than anything, as much as I love fancy musicianship and all that kind of stuff, more than anything I love singers.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's all about, like, everything that I do and almost most of the genres that I play, it's all about the singers. And I've got to work with some just incredible singers. That's what really gets me off in terms of playing, when you get to sit behind someone who's just, and it doesn't mean that the voice has to be technical.
I got you.
It might be the way they tell the story.
Yeah.
Daniel March is one of my favourite storytellers when it comes to music.
Okay.
If you can talk to, and
I've been trying to. Yeah, we've been trying to put something together.
A weapon musician.
Yeah.
You know,
I got his EP a couple of weeks ago. I was actually
incredible.
listening to it yesterday.
Man.
Yeah,
that thing is
while I was sanding the wall at home. I had
world class.
Fantastic. Yeah.
But yeah, I mainly wound up working with female vocalists. When I think about it. But yeah, I've found myself very fortunate to work with really great singers in that way.
So what do you enjoy playing the most?
Stylistically?
Yeah.
Well, I think I'm really lucky because I play a lot of different... I'm involved in a lot of different styles with that. So currently Andrews, who she is the most legitimate soul, blues soul singer ever. You know, and the music is simple. There's a lot of space, and she's a great guitarist. Great, and so it's very raw. That's very raw and heartfelt. So that satisfies a certain pocket for me, you know. And then I get to play with this Thandi Phoenix project I'm doing. Is a lot more electronic. You know, we run a lot of track and we have a lot of electronic toys that we're playing and samplers and all sorts of things, and that really gets to satisfy that part of what I do. And then I play with this other artist, Joy, who I recently toured in Europe with, and it's very contained. There's electronics, but a lot of space. She told me the other day that when she was born to the Enya sound, Enya was playing when she was born, and it's like that, and therefore, well, it kind of actually explains some of the sonics that she is a lot of just beautiful, pretty melodies, but electronic as well. Like you know, she's an incredible producer. She's 20 years old, and writes her own stuff, produces her own stuff, plays piano beautifully, sings like an angel, and that stuff is very. You're playing electronics but having to play very contained because you're replicating the record, you know, and that satisfies that particular thing. And then I work with DJs often where I'm playing either like electronic percussion or kind of Latin percussion stuff, which I don't do very well, but I enjoy it. You know, if I'm digging the tunes. And that satisfies that. And then I get to do some singer-songwriter stuff with people where I'm just playing cajon. Again, I don't do it in a traditional way or super amazingly, but I enjoy it, and that satisfies that. So I get to spread out my musical brain a bit across a few different styles.
Do you get to chop it up much?
The most that we like really get to dig in is if I'm playing on like covers gigs where we really have room to play.
Okay, yeah, good.
You know, and I'll often work with Daryl, who's the master of that stuff. Like if I'm putting a covers band together, I'll generally be Daryl and Adam and you know, various singers up front, but where we just get to kind of stretch out a little bit. But you know, I'm not much of a chopper, but you know, musically we get to push out a bit, even if it's covers. We'll take it on a bit of a journey. So I get to. I don't know if I have a favorite. I don't know if I could do just the one thing forever. Sometimes, like, something will take precedent for a while if it's on tour or something. That's another discipline in itself, where you play the same thing for 20 shows straight, and still find the passion and the joy in that, you know, or ways to make it feel different if that's what you got to do, or ways to perfect it and make it feel exactly right, exactly the same every time. Different headsets and different approaches, you know. But I like right now I'm playing for a Canadian country artist coming up this weekend. I just got sent the songs this morning, and so it's the first country artist I've played for. And so I'm learning that. Not that country music's hard, but I tell you what, country. It's not hard, but the musicianship.
It's got a pocket,
oh my God,
its own,
If you watch any of those big country acts, I mean, there's 50 guitars on stage, but it never sounds excessive. Everyone's playing their part, and they can all sing beautifully. They can all play their instrument beautifully, and they play songs, which is the most important part. You know, the song is the most important part. You know.
See, one of my favourite drummers was Paul Leem.
Who?
Paul Leem, he's a Nashville country drummer. Oh man.
Oh yeah. I don't listen to a lot of country, but anytime I'm watching, anytime I'm like, if there's stuff like, sometimes it's like country music awards, or if you see it on TV for something, it's always like world class. There's no bullshit with the singers either.
No,
you know?
Not at all.
All got that twang. So when we were in on the last day of South by Southwest, you know, the conference was finished. It was the day before we were flying out. We went to the Austin Rodeo, which felt like a real kitsch thing to do, you know. It felt like just this novelty thing, but it was what they do. Like, it's what they do every day. So we went with Thandi's band, you know, and management, and there's, you know, this electronic kind of thing. We went to the rodeo. Everyone's wearing their big bucket hats, not because it's the thing to do. It's because it's what they do. It's just their every day, and we watched them do the bull riding and the horse roping and all that kind of stuff. It was kind of hard to watch, to be honest. I found like some where they release a young calf and then they chase it down with a lasso it and catch it looked pretty brutal and rough, and then they let it go and the next person catches it, you know. But that was funny to see. It was funny to see, to be a part of that whole thing, and the fairground and all that kind of stuff. Fairy floss and big Southern American accents and hats and belt buckles and checker shirts and plenty of gun racks on the back of cars and all that kind of stuff. But then, you know, the closing thing was that they had a couple of big country artists that came in on the back of a truck into the arena, you know, came in playing, being towed by the stage is being towed by this truck, and they're playing, and then, you know, that kind of goes around the arena and then turns around, and they're just playing like, you know, my truck broke down, my woman left me, the whole thing. It is a cliche, but it's spot on. And
my dog got run over by the truck.
And it was, but it was great, you know, great musicians. Yeah, all right. So yeah, man, musically I spread a bit, but it's not like I push into any obscure stuff. You know,
sort of stay in your lane, so to speak.
Well, stay in my lane, stay in my capabilities too.
Yeah.
Like if someone booked me for like a serious jazz gig, you know, it'd be embarrassing for them because I'm not that person, you know. And same with Latin stuff. I wish that I grew up around Latin music, you know, like serious, the heavy stuff. I still think it's incredible the way that it flows, but it's just not something that is in my blood, you know. Well, I didn't come up around it, so I love this. Talking about world-class musicians, some of the Latin players we have here.
I was about to say,
man.
Yep.
Scary, like just, I can't comprehend what they're doing or how they're doing it while playing like the timbales and the bells. And these obscure patterns and the pulse of it. You know, the way that it moves more like a heartbeat than anything else, you know. Man, I'm just rambling now, aren't I?
No, that's all good. Well, we'll sort of close it out with how do you see the next 12 months?
Man, next 12 months, you know, well, a few of the projects that I've been hammering away at with people are really starting to get legs.
Cool.
So I hope to be travelling a lot again.
Right.
Now, like this year, I hit 19 countries, so now I feel like I want to go more. Unlikely, I feel like it was a pretty lucky year, but I really feel like some of the things I'm working on, well, I think all the things I'm working on will keep growing. And which is, for me, the most rewarding thing, just that things which I've been able to pour some energy into working. And just whether that means, like I said earlier, the next gig is bigger than the last one, or the next, you know, traveling interstate, traveling overseas. So yeah, I hope to. There's probably 3 or 4 separate projects which I'm a part of, which I see growing. Some points there'll be times I'll have to dep things.
Sure.
I've said this to a few people now, and probably on the last podcast. You know, there are times on this last tour, the Europe tour I did. Well, we were playing to up to 18,000 people a night. You know, every night, arenas. And there's on stage, I was often thinking, is this the pinnacle? In terms of size and stature of what I'll ever do. But then you come back and I'm equally energised about getting the next thing to play the 200 people or 300 people.
Yeah, I think you said that.
I'm equally excited.
Podcast, you like the bass player, sweat dripping on your shoulders.
Yeah. I like it. You know, I like working hard and you know, as fun as it is to have crew do everything for you. There is a rewarding part in like doing the hard work and getting it done. Yeah. Yeah. So the next 12 months, I really hope that these original projects just keep moving forward in leaps and bounds, and maybe develop this kind of BPM idea some more.
Look forward to the sausage sizzle down at the Bunnings.
Yeah, that'll be the launch party.
Launch party.
Cheapest launch party you can ever have.
Boy.
$2.50.
Where are all the sausages? Oh shit! Sorry, bro.
So yeah, we'll just keep on moving forward with all things, hopefully, and also some holiday time.
Yeah, cool.
Really important for me to see my brothers. I got to see all my brothers this year. Did I? No, one of my brothers I didn't get to see this year, so it means I'll definitely go to the States, maybe even before the end of the year, just for a quick trip. But if not next year, I'm planning a trip to Barbados with my partner. She's from Barbados. Cool. And we want to go over there, which means generally travelling through US and West Coast, East Coast, onto Barbados. So yeah, travel and fit the music in there to hopefully pay for the travel. Great. Yeah.
Well, Yanya Boston, this was fantastic, man. I thoroughly enjoyed this.
Oh, thank you.
Wish you all the best for the next 12 months.
Oh, thanks for spending the time.
Too easy.
Hope I didn't ramble on too much.
No, you're right. See, when you ramble, I don't have to talk. People don't want to hear me talk.
I know that you'll probably send me a copy of this to listen to before it goes out, and I'm already dreading it.
No, man.
I can't even remember what I talked about now.
No.
I'm just sweating.
It's all good. Cheers, bro.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
No, sweet as.